Hi, I'm Marti. I'm from Inverness in Scotland, and I'm a fan of Real Valladolid in Spain.
Hi Marti, how are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. How are things in Inverness at the moment?
Yeah, things are good. It's especially good if you like rain, and if you like grey clouds. It's it would certainly be your place. But generally, it's been quite nice. But today's been a little bit different, but generally okay.
Yeah, it's the same. It's exactly the same here.
But do you get warm rain or do you get cold rain like us?
I wouldn't call it as cold as your rain, but
our rain goes sideways.
Oh no, we don't have that. We just have a lot of it.
A lot of it, yeah. Same here.
You said you were on a break at the moment?
Yeah, I'm just on a little holiday from work, so I've been catching up on the more mundane things of domestic chores around the house, but it's also given me a good chance to catch up on a lot of the football news, and just things are moving so quickly because there's such a short break in Spain at the moment between the end of this last season, which is kind of still going on with the second division teams playing their playoff race to get promoted to La Liga, and some of the other teams are already in their pre-season training for the upcoming season. So yeah, it's been a good time to catch up on bits and pieces around the league.
And how's the site coming along?
Yeah, well, I'm planning a complete overhaul of the site. I had started it at the beginning of last season, and it was more geared towards producing articles, match previews, match reports, sort of updates on player movements, that kind of thing, people coming in and out of the club and people leaving the club. But my overhaul is to make it a bit more of a simplistic site to look at. I think it was too wordy in its current form. So I'm trying to trim down the amount of words that are on the screen and replace that with opportunities to click on what will hopefully be a YouTube channel and the podcast as well, which I'm hoping to launch at the start of next week too. So exciting times ahead, and just looking to modernize it a little bit, I think.
I eagerly await your podcast.
Well, I'll have one listener then. That will be good.
To begin with, our first question for this podcast: how and why Real Valladolid?
Well, it's a bit of a strange story, but listening to some of your other shows, there have been other guests who have had equally interesting stories. But mine actually involved the team coming to Inverness, and that's really how I got into them. I have always been very interested in Spain, very interested in the culture and the people and the language. Ever since I was in secondary school, around my teenage years, I started going there on holiday. Just fell in love with the place, and I've always been interested in football as well. So when I heard that this team was coming over to Inverness in Scotland for a pre-season friendly with our local side, Inverness Caledonian Thistle, I felt like I needed to go along and watch. I'd heard a little bit about the club in the past, and we'll maybe sort of get into talking about how I heard about them first of all. But it was a club that I had a small amount of knowledge about, but when I went to go and see them play, I was really struck by their very unique violet and white striped kits. It was kind of cool. It was like no other team I'd ever seen in person before. So that was really my first experience of them, and I was just hooked on the club straight away. I was very captured with how down to earth they were. I'd spent quite a few years in the past following Barcelona around various European games. I'd been to see them play in La Liga quite a bit. And the more I followed them, the more I realised they were like these kind of unattainable superstars who us mere mortals weren't allowed anywhere near. And they were all very quite standoffish, and any appearance that they made was very staged. So when this team Real Valladolid turned up in my own hometown, I got the chance to speak to them after the game. Some of the players were coming out and they were taking photos of the scenery, because where the stadium is situated, it's beside a body of water, and they all thought that was the famous Loch Ness. So they were standing on the other side of the street from the stadium taking photos of something that wasn't Loch Ness, but one of the players told me that's what they were doing, and I said, well, Loch Ness is about between 8 and 10 miles in the other direction, and we just had a bit of a laugh about that. And he said, well, I'll keep it a secret, I won't tell the other guys. So to go from this very staged experience with some of the elite players of the game in Barcelona, and also in my experiences of following the Spanish national team around, and getting to meet a lot of the Real Madrid players and players from Valencia, and really top quality players. These guys were just so down to earth, very engaging, really friendly. So I went back home and I fired up the internet and I found some fan websites, a couple of forums. I went on there and I just introduced myself and said that I'd been to see the game, that I really liked the team, I really liked the welcome that they gave me, and they just kind of suggested that I should be their new supporter from Scotland. So I took it as a bit of a joke and agreed to it, and I wasn't expecting the level of welcome that these fans gave me. They were just, they welcomed me with open arms. I mean, it sounds a bit of a cliche, but that's what it was like. I've heard other guests on your podcast talk about feeling like part of a family, and that's what it was. Instantaneously, they were so pleased that somebody from out with the city or out with the region was taking an interest in the team, and they couldn't quite believe that somebody from another country was interested in them. So they kind of threw all this friendship and warmth at me, and it's just grown from there. This was 10 years ago this month, and yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's been an adventure. It's been great fun, and I'm just really grateful that I went along to the match that night, or else I would have missed something that has become probably one of the biggest things in my life, one of my biggest passions.
And how did the site start?
My website, it started because I was aware that there was a complete lack of information in English about this team. Even some of the other outlets, other Spanish football podcasts and websites that you can access, they tend to concentrate on the big 2 or 3 teams, Barcelona, Real Madrid, or Atletico Madrid. They would sort of dabble in Valencia, Villarreal, teams like this. But there's so much more to the Spanish league than just this handful of teams. The standard is really high. The passion for teams outside of the elite level of teams is just massive. And I thought they've shown me such warmth and generosity that it's kind of my task as an English speaker to be able to broadcast that to the rest of the world. So I thought a website was a good place to start. Twitter as well. Twitter is really where everything came together in terms of communicating with fans and becoming more well known, but also learning more about the club too. So I kind of feel it's my duty to take all the kindness that they've shown me and shine that outwards towards the world, and maybe get a few more people interested in the team.
That's brilliant. And someone like me knows a lot about the club since they've come up, obviously, to La Liga, and because of the new owner.
Absolutely.
Ronaldo. So
yeah, that is...
So how is he viewed by the fan base?
Well, it's such a strange acquisition for him, because obviously Ronaldo is, he's a 2-time World Cup winner. He's widely considered one of the greatest players of his generation, and rightly so, I think. He's played for the biggest teams in club football. Internationally, he's played for Brazil. He's won the top competitions. So when he made the segue into retirement, there were lots of questions about what he might do. Would he get into coaching, that sort of thing? But he was found more in the broadcast booths of various South American channels, covering Brazil, covering lots of South American league football. But he had made it quite clear that he would like to acquire a football club and become the president of that. I don't think anyone in a million years would have imagined it would have been Real Valladolid. So that was a major coup for them in terms of publicity, because I was clicking on websites that wouldn't normally mention Spanish football to begin with, and there was our team, front and center as the headline, because if you know football, or even if you don't know football so well, you still know who Ronaldo is, the original Ronaldo.
Yeah.
He's so iconic around world football. So for him to take over a club like Real Valladolid made the world's media sit up and really take notice. And what I found in the last couple of months to a year is that that's been people's first experiences of hearing about Real Valladolid, is going, oh, that's the club that Ronaldo owns. So from that perspective, he's definitely heightened people's awareness of the club. He has what he describes as a long-term project for the club that he's literally going to build it from the grassroots up. They've got pretty good facilities anyway. Their stadium, it's looking a little bit tired around the edges now. It was made for the 1982 World Cup. It was one of the World Cup venue games in the 82 World Cup in Spain. But since then, it's been a bit of a stranger to renovation until last season, where they lowered the pitch and they removed that very 80s style moat that was around the pitch, so they could add more seats, they could bring people closer to the action. And also, with the team cementing its status as a top league team, they were able to benefit from having further interest in season tickets, that sort of thing. So the capacity at the moment sits at around the 27,000 mark, and they've got 22,000 season ticket holders. So what Ronaldo wants to do is really concentrate on the area around the stadium, improving the training facilities, improving the pitches that the team does its everyday work on, but also that hosts their junior teams and their B team, just to try and bring them up a level, and to make the club a more attractive proposition to potential players coming in. I think what he wants to do is really try and attract the best young players from around the region to come to Real Valladolid and develop themselves as a player to hopefully try and get in the first team. Because although Ronaldo's an extremely successful player and a successful businessman, the club itself, when he took over, held quite a bit of debt. That's all been cleared off, so there's not a lot of money in the transfer kitty. So they're not going to go out and spend £200 million on a Brazilian superstar. They tend to deal mainly in the loan market or very, very short-term deals. So I think I was guilty of this as well. I thought Ronaldo's just going to come in and he's going to open his wallet and there's just going to be the big names coming to the club and, we'll be challenging for Europe, etc., etc. I jumped the gun on that. I was like many people. And I think some fans have found it quite difficult to adjust to the mindset that this is going to be a slow burner, that Ronaldo is in it for the long haul. He's developing a club of the future, and it is a project. And, there's the old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, and I don't think Valladolid is going to be either. So what he's trying to do is kind of buck the trend of being the multi-millionaire owner who comes in and then just splashes the cash, that he wants to build a sustainable project. And that kind of flies in the face of what modern football's doing at the moment. So I'm actually okay with it. It would be great to see some success in the short term, but I think they're really building for the future. And if people have the patience, I think they're going to see a club that develops into a top six challenger at the very least.
What is your earliest memory of the club?
My earliest memory of the club, well, we've spoken about the match that I went to go and see, but I kind of alluded to the fact that I knew a little bit about them beforehand, but not too much. Yeah. Where that came from was actually sitting at home one day and watching the Spanish under-21 team playing England's under-21 team in a competition. Now, my favourite position in football is the goalkeeper. I've always had a real interest in the goalkeeper. I think it's a really dynamic position, and as a young boy growing up, that was basically the position that you could just throw yourself about and get the muddiest clothes and look like you had done the most work. So I love being a goalkeeper, and I've always held them in really high regard. And my interest in Spain was certainly helped by Iker Casillas playing in the national team, and he was just, and still is, an idol to me and many other goalkeepers around the world. So I was particularly interested by the under-21 goalkeeper, who's a player called Sergio Asenjo. So when I'd finished watching that match, although Spain lost, I was really quite kind of taken by his performance. And I was thinking, this could be the next Iker Casillas. This could be the guy who comes up and is his natural successor. So, my little mind started kind of going over, I need to find out a bit more about this guy. So I found out that he played for Real Valladolid and that he was a local boy. He was born in a place called Palencia, which is just over 50 kilometres from the Jose Zorrilla Stadium. So he was one of their own. Now, he's a really interesting player because he only played 47 times for Real Valladolid in the first team, but he's so well thought of. Oh. And when you and I had a chat before about choosing a club legend, he was the first person who my mind went to. I didn't go with him, and we'll get to that later. But he was definitely a strong candidate because he's extremely well thought of, and his performances for Real Valladolid earned him a move to Atletico Madrid, and this looked like this was going to be his progression into the big time. This was going to be that was going to cement him as one of the top goalkeepers in the league and push for a place in the Spanish national team. Unfortunately for him, he suffered a series of pretty bad knee injuries. And for any footballer, that can be devastating to have one. But he had two in quite quick succession. So he lost his place to a goalkeeper called David De Gea at one point, who was with Atletico Madrid. And, I think he went on to do okay for himself. And yeah, he did okay. He has his moments, but generally he does fine. So he ended up struggling to get his place back when he returned from injury, and he ended up being transferred out to Villarreal. Now, thankfully, his luck improved, and he was able to cement his place as the number one choice. And he's still a very, very good goalkeeper. He's definitely been hampered by the injuries, and it's quite sad because he had huge potential, and he never fulfilled that potential through no fault of his own. I think it was just a series of bad injuries, and then the difficulty in being able to come back from that. Because if you're a defender, you might get rotated into a squad if you're coming back from injury. But as a goalkeeper, once a team settles on a first choice goalkeeper, it's very difficult for another player to come in and break into that. So he's actually played more times for Real Valladolid than he has for Atletico Madrid, but that's kind of where he was most well known, because that was the big move for him. He's so well thought of among the fans, and he's got a lot of time for the Real Valladolid fans, who still as a local lad and as a brief but really good servant of the club, he's held in such high esteem. So that was what gave me my first exposure to Real Valladolid as a team. I did a bit of background reading on them. So unfortunately, when they came to Scotland to play that pre-season friendly, he had gone by this point. So I just narrowly missed out on seeing him, which would have been wonderful. But it is a bit of a goal of mine to, if you pardon the pun, to see him in the flesh. So I think I'll probably have to get to a Villarreal match, maybe against Real Valladolid. That would be good to see. But he's one of these players that the fans of his former teams don't harbour any ill will towards at all, even though he left, because they appreciate what he did for them, and he's still considered kind of part of the fabric of the club. So that was my first experience of them before going to see the match in Scotland, and it's just grown from there.
Who is your club legend?
My club legend is a striker called Víctor Fernández. Now, again, I've been listening to your podcast quite a bit, and I've been really interested in the stories that people have told about their club legends for the club that they support. But the way that mine differs is, like, I never saw this guy kick a ball for my team, ever. So he was, yeah, he was gone from there by the time I got interested in them. But my digging into the club history and speaking to people, Victor was a striker who spent 2 different periods of time with the club, and it's always interesting when a player leaves a club for another club and then returns, just to see what kind of reception. When he came back the second time, he actually played more matches and scored more goals the second time round. So he was born in 1974, and he began his career with Leganés as a youth player, and then he progressed on to the Real Madrid C team and then on to the B team before going out to Tenerife on a permanent contract, and he was loaned out to Toledo during that time. So we're talking between 1994 and 96. So you're already building up the picture that this guy's a bit of a journeyman. He's one of these guys that he's featured for several different clubs, but Real Valladolid is the club that he's played most for. So after Tenerife, he played 4 seasons with Real Valladolid. In his first season, he scored 16 goals, and the club finished 7th. Now, if memory serves me correctly, that's actually their best finish since they finished 4th way back, like in the mists of time. Their best ever finish was 4th, and I'm just trying to remember when that was. That was about 62, 63.
Okay.
If I've got that right. So there's not been a lot of success with this club. So for them to finish in 7th was a really, really good season, and he was a massive part of that. So all in all, in that first spell, he spent 133 matches, 133 league matches, and he scored 38 goals. So that's not a massive amount, but apart from the occasional player, Real Valladolid have never had a guy that just scores tons and tons of goals. Yeah. They did have one, and I'll get to him later on, but Victor it was more his work rate that was the key to his game. He just seemed to have a real passion for the club and a real drive. I've gone back through YouTube, and I've found websites with kind of historic matches of all different teams. So I've keyed in on a few that he's played in, but also reading up on the history of the club. And I've made quite a few friends who have been long-time Real Valladolid fans, and he's somebody that they speak very highly of as well. You still see people going to matches with an old shirt with his name and number on the back. So he moved to Villarreal in 2000, and he spent 4 seasons there before returning. And he had a really good strike partner the second time around at the club called Joseba Llorente. Now, he's probably most famous for being the holder of the record for the quickest goal ever scored in La Liga. Oh. So that sits at 7.8 seconds, I believe. Wow. When they played Espanyol at home in 2008. It was almost literally right from the kickoff that they went 1-0 up. So he and Llorente made quite a good pairing up front. So he was there for another 4 seasons, played almost 170 league games and scored 52 goals. And then when he left, he went to Cartagena and then on to Leganés for a couple of years. Then when he wrapped up his playing career at Leganés, he actually became their manager for an extremely brief spell in 2012, where the club was kind of teetering on the brink of going down to the 3rd division. Now in Spain, you've got the Primera is the top division. Yeah. Then you've got the Segunda. And then underneath that, you've got a league called Segunda B, which many of the teams there actually don't play full-time football. So it's a bit of a football wilderness, which kind of shows you that the 3rd division, the one underneath that, would be pretty catastrophic for a club with any ambitions to still be a full-time team. So he managed to save them from relegation. So he's a bit of a cult figure there as well. And Leganés, if you follow Spanish football, spent a couple of seasons recently in the top flight and only got relegated, I think, on the last match day of this year. So they've gone back down to Segunda, but they're a team who I think would be straight back up again. So Victor, yeah, he's kind of one of these legendary figures that just represented the club very well. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't arrogant, he wasn't one of these players that was just going to kind of blow you away, but he scored goals. Football fans love goals, and he really, really helped them to survival on quite a few occasions, which, as we've discussed, seems to be the objective for Real Valladolid. But to get them all the way up to 7th was a bit of a magical season, I'd say.
And who are Valladolid's rivals?
That's a curious question. They have two main rivals, but they don't encounter them very much. The first one I would say is a team called Sporting Gijón, who play in Gijón, which is to the north of Valladolid. And there's a bit of there's quite a bit of bad blood between those teams, and a lot of making fun of each other between the two sets of fans. The last time they played Sporting Gijón was actually in the 2017 to 18 season, which is when they were both in the Segunda Division, and they played a couple of times against each other in the league, but then they actually met each other in the promotion playoffs, and Real Valladolid were able to knock Sporting out in the first round, which was, pretty much as good as it gets for a lot of their fans. And then they went on to play against Numancia in the next round, and they beat them and managed to get up to the top division, where they've thankfully stayed for a couple of seasons. Since then, Sporting have really struggled. They're in the lower half of the second division for most of last season, and they were nowhere near the playoff places whatsoever at all. So it's difficult to have a rivalry, I guess, with a team that you don't play too many times. And I don't mean that in a we're better than them kind of way, because we're in the top division and they're not. I would like it if the two teams shared a division. I would love to see Sporting get promoted, because I think a derby match between the two of them in the top division would be excellent. But I think we might be some way off that happening. They've also got another rival called Cultural Leonesa. Now, they were in the Segunda Division as well, but they've dropped down to Segunda B, so their trajectory is kind of going in the opposite direction of where Real Valladolid are going, and Sporting Gijón are kind of in the middle of that, with the wheels spinning, not really making any headway or up or down. So I would say that Cultural are probably bigger rivals than Sporting are. There have been some pretty tasty encounters between the two sides, but again, with Cultural dropping down, there's now two divisions between them, and unless they get drawn in the Copa del Rey or something like that, the chances of them playing against each other are few and far between at the moment. So what we really need is a team in the top division that we're rivals with, and generally I think they tend to play better against the teams around them, especially the newly promoted teams, because they're going to be their direct rivals. Our seasons are never going to be deemed successful or otherwise based on your results against the big teams. If you beat one of those guys, it's a bonus, but your kind of bread and butter matches are against the teams in the lower half of the division and against the teams in the relegation zone, because that's what's ultimately going to save your season or see you going down. And Real Valladolid are your classic yo-yo team. They're up and down the top two divisions, fairly regularly. So although they don't have a rival per se in the top division, the big games are against the teams that are closest to them on points, because it is a matter of survival most of the time.
Player who you felt deserved a bit more praise for their time at the club?
This will be quite a polarizing choice for Real Valladolid fans, because depending on who you are, you either love this guy or you think he's the worst player that's ever pulled on the shirt. I've gone for a player that just left this summer, a Turkish striker by the name of Enes Ünal, who I was a massive, massive fan of. I feel that he definitely didn't get the credit that he deserves, because when we were speaking about Victor there, we mentioned that Real Valladolid are not a team that usually scores a lot of goals. But in the 2017 to 18 season, where we gained promotion, we had a centre forward by the name of Jaime Mata, who now plays for Getafe. and he was outstanding. He was just he was like every Real Valladolid fan's dream come true. He was so prolific in his scoring. In fact, made a couple of notes in the successful promotion campaign. He played 39 league matches, including the playoffs, and he scored 33 goals in that time, which is just incredible. He was the reason that Real Valladolid got promoted that season. If he hadn't played anywhere close to the level that he did, they wouldn't have been anywhere near the playoff places at all. And I don't think it's been detrimental to other players' contributions to say that he almost single-handedly just hauled them through the season, because in February of 2018, the team was 12th in the Segunda, and nothing was working for them at all. When he really started clicking, it was an absolute joy to watch, and he just scored so many goals that they just catapulted up the league. And on the last day of the season, I was fortunate enough to be there when they were playing at home against Osasuna, and it was basically a winner-takes-all match. If Real Valladolid won, they got into the playoffs. If they didn't, if Osasuna won, they would have leapfrogged Real Valladolid and they would have claimed the last playoff place. So it all came down to that final match, and Real Valladolid won 2-0. Jaime Mata scored a penalty, and he went on to score another couple of crucial goals throughout the playoff race. So he had already attracted quite a lot of attention from bigger teams, and when it looked like Real Valladolid were completely out of the running in the second division, he signed a pre-contract agreement with Getafe to say that he was going to play for them in La Liga the next season. Now, a player of his caliber, that's his natural environment. He needed to be in La Liga. So he took the very, very difficult choice and just said, I've done all I can with this team in terms of my own career. I need to move forward. So a curious thing happened as Real Valladolid began to rise up the league and then secured a playoff place. There were actually questions surrounding, was he going to stay? Because if they got promoted to La Liga and he wanted to play La Liga football, could he stay with the club? So, there was this huge social media campaign to try and change his mind and what have you. But one of the things I respected most about Jaime Mata, apart from the goals that he gave our club, was that he was loyal to his word. And he said, no, I have an agreement with Getafe and I'm going to honour it. So when they play against Getafe, I think he scored against us this season at the Jose Zorrilla Stadium. And although there were no fans there, his celebrations were really muted. He sort of clasped his hands almost apologetically. And I think that's a mark of that mutual respect between how he feels about the club and how the fans and everybody associated with Real Valladolid feel about him. So when he left, he took his 33 goals with him. He took his second division top scorer award with him. And we were left with very little option. I think the team had scored something like, 7 goals in total through other players. So a huge part of our weaponry had gone. And we picked up a striker on loan from Villarreal called Enes Ünal. And I think that, unfortunately for him, he was a victim of Jaime Mata's success, because people had fairly unrealistic expectations for him. I think the fact that he took the number 9 shirt that Mata had worn the season before didn't help. So it was immediately drawing these comparisons. Here's somebody who's stepping into the number 9 shirt. He needs to live up to that reputation. Now, as much as I really like Enes Ünal, and I do, he's not the striker that Jaime Mata is. So in his first season, he scored 6 goals for the club. So that was not the season we've just had, the one before. Now, 3 of those were penalties, and that kind of gives you an idea that 3 goals from open play from a striker who played just about every minute of the season isn't a massive return. So he was on the sharp end of a lot of criticism for that, but I really admired his work rate I thought that he had a very tough task to step in and replace a better striker at a higher level of competition. Not only had they lost Jaime Mata, but they were going up against better teams, better defences.
Yeah.
They were going to be on the back foot for most of the season. So obviously, that number of goals wasn't going to be achievable. The fact that he only got 6 was slightly disappointing, but I think people were missing the general point that he really worked hard for the good of the team. He was one of these strikers that wasn't afraid to come all the way back to the edge of his own penalty area to make a tackle, to win the ball back. So at the end of the season, he left to go back to Villarreal, and people, a lot of people were like, "Oh, thank goodness for that." But I was getting a lot of flack from people because I was saying, "I like this guy. I hope he comes back. I hope we sign him on a permanent deal." And people were saying, what for? Six goals? But I think people lost sight of the fact that he was replacing a better striker who had played at a lower level. So it was a tough ask for him to come in and fill those boots. But he came back on loan for a second season because Villarreal had Gerard Moreno up front. They ended up signing Paco Alcácer from Borussia Dortmund. So they were well stocked for strikers, and Enes Ünal in all honesty, he wasn't going to get anywhere near playing football at all for Villarreal. So he negotiated a deal to come back and spend a second season with us, and I think he scored 6 goals again. So he scored 1 or 2 penalties. So again, the goal return wasn't massive, but just watching that guy week in, week out, he covered literally every blade of grass. He worked hard. He hurried up players who had the ball. He closed them down quickly. He forced them into mistakes. So for me, it wasn't just about the goals. It was about what he contributed overall to the team with his work rate. And you never once saw him dropping his head and thinking that he was chasing a lost cause. He normally played as part of 2 up front with a player called Sergi Guardiola, and there was an interesting bit where just towards the end of the season, Real Valladolid won a penalty, and it looked like Enes Ünal was going to take it, but he actually gave the ball to Sergi Guardiola to take the penalty, because in a previous match, which finished 0-0, I think it was against Levante, Ünal had missed a penalty in the 96th minute that would have probably given them the win. And I think he felt that maybe for this next penalty, he wasn't the right player to do it. So he was sacrificing the chance to become the team's top scorer for the good of the team. And I think that's quite a rare quality to find in a player. So I think he got quite a lot of criticism, which was unfair, because he was stepping into this really big task. But in general, I think he gave a good account of himself. And when he left Valladolid to go back to Villarreal at the end of this season, he wrote a note on Instagram to fans, as a lot of players do, and he said, "I hope you remember me as somebody who gave everything for the club." And I think that's definitely the thing that people should hold on to. And in another plot twist, he's signed a permanent deal with Getafe. So now we face the prospect of, at the José Zorrilla next season, Getafe coming to town with a front 2 of Jaime Mata and Enes Ünal. And, I'm thinking, what have we got to do to hold on to these guys?
Young players you are looking to see more of.
Right. Well, life has thrown me a bit of a curveball in that respect, because when we first broached the idea of doing this podcast, and this was one of the items that we were going to discuss, I had one name in my head, and it was Miguel De La Fuente, who was at the time quite a successful striker in the Real Valladolid B team, which is called the Promesas, which translates as promises, which I think is a great name for a group of young players coming through. Now, Miguel featured very occasionally prior to the pause in the season for the COVID-19 pandemic, and there were quite a few calls for him to be included in the squad to back up players like Enes Ünal and Sergi Guardiola. The other guy that they had playing up front last season was on loan from Everton, a player called Sandro Ramirez, who had endured, I think it was about 2 years without scoring a goal, which for a striker is remarkably bad. So young Miguel was very highly thought of in the B team, seen as a real prospect, a bit of a nugget of gold coming through from the younger ranks. He made it into the squad sporadically, but didn't feature. But one of the great things about the games after the lockdown being played in quite quick succession was that coaches were having to rotate their squads quite a bit instead of having guys playing 2 matches in the space of 3 or 4 days. So Sergio, spoken about him being quite conservative in his approach before, I think this really forced his hand that he had to open up the squad a bit more. So he included quite a few players from the B team to come through the ranks and feature in the first team. There were players like Diego Allende, Kike Perez and Miguel, who all featured quite heavily in the last couple of games of the season. So it was looking good for Miguel to get maybe a bit more of a shot this season. But from what I'm hearing is that he's actually going to be sent out on loan this season to another team. Now, I don't quite have that information to hand because it's been a pretty busy week and it's just been something that's been talked about this week. But that has completely and utterly destroyed my my ambition for him to come in, especially with Enes Ünal leaving. You've got to be thinking that there couldn't be a better time for him to come in and make his mark. But it does make me think that we're going to end up picking up a striker of some description in the summer transfer market, because with Ünal going and Sandro Ramirez leaving after his loan period, it basically just leaves Sergi Guardiola as the only first-team striker. And we're not a team that plays one up front, and I think we'd score even less goals if we played with one up front. So in terms of Miguel, I thought it was a great shot for him, but it seems like Sergio has got plans for somebody else to come in, and perhaps Miguel's future lies away from the club, in the long term. So we'll wait and see. But there is a defender called Roberto Corral, who is a very good centre back, or kind of left back as well. He might get a chance to come through the ranks this season. There's other players like Sekou Gassama, who was out on loan in the second division last season. He's returned, and I've seen lots of pictures of him on the club's social media, training with the first team. So he could be a good bet to come through, but I have to admit to being more than a little bit disappointed that it's not going to be Miguel's time to shine for us in the upcoming season.
Let's hope you get that striker.
Fingers crossed. They'll probably be phoning me to come and play a match for them at this rate if they don't bring anyone in, and nobody wants that.
A game that left you elated and a game that left you disappointed.
There could only be one game that left me elated, and that was the first time I ever set foot inside the José Zorrilla Stadium, and it was to watch that match that I spoke about against Osasuna in that winner-takes-all, playoff contention battle. It was just electric. It was like nothing I've ever experienced in my life, and I have been at the Camp Nou with over 100,000 other people for a Barcelona against Real Madrid match. There was just something about this game and that team that season, which had come out of the darkness and shot all the way up the league, and it was almost destiny that it was going to come down to this last match of the season against Osasuna to qualify. The José Zorrilla Stadium hadn't been that full in quite a few years. It was an absolute sellout. The weather was beautiful. The way that the fans received the team bus was like something you'd see from a match in South America. They were lining the sides of the street. There was a fan zone before the game. There were flares and there was confetti, and the bus just made its way slowly towards the stadium, and all the fans are chanting and singing and waving their scarves. And people I spoke to there have been going to see the team for a long time, and they said this is like nothing that we've ever experienced. It was a crucial game, and the whole place was just, there was such an energy about it. It was absolutely just I'm having trouble describing it succinctly because it was that good. I think it was so good for me as well because that was my first time at the Joseria. I'd only ever watched it on TV before. It was like stepping into somewhere that was so familiar that I'd never been before. Because when I'd been watching it on TV, they were playing in the second division and there was maybe 7,000 people there or 12,000 people. And they've got these beautiful purple and white seats and a really nice design around the stadium. Don't get me wrong, as much as I love that, I would rather see fans in those seats. So it was one of those perfect days where everything just clicked into place and Real Valladolid won the match. There was a huge celebration afterwards. The queue for the next match, the first round of the playoffs, the tickets went on sale on the Monday morning, and the lines for that for the shop that was selling the tickets, it was 4 deep in places, and it stretched up the street and round the corner. And unfortunately, I needed to go into that shop to buy a new suitcase for on the way home because all of the gifts that people had given me while I had been there didn't fit in the small bag that I'd taken. And one of my friends who I met for the first time out there, he said, "Don't worry, we'll go and get a new suitcase for you. I know just the shop." So he took me to the shop, and then his jaw kind of hit the floor because he saw just this huge amount of people all trying to get into this shop to buy tickets. So I was like, well, what are we going to do? My train back to Madrid leaves quite soon, and I can't take all these carrier bags with me. So he said, "Okay, watch this." So he started shouting at the top of his voice that this was the guy from Scotland that was here. This was the good luck charm. This was the talisman. This is the reason that you were promoted. It was a bit of a joke, but it was incredible to see. People were just parting, to make this path towards the shop for me. I was getting hugs, I was getting kisses on the cheek from people, and they're like, "Oh, we love you, you're our hero." It was like being a celebrity. It was so strange. And then when we went into the shop, it was just full of people, and somebody at the back of the shop got word that we were looking for the suitcase, and I kind of had to point to the one that I wanted up on a high shelf, and they took it down, and people were passing it over their heads down to the cash register at the front so I could buy it. The guy gave me a discount for it, gave me a big hug, and they're all saying, "You've got to come back soon, can you not stay for the playoffs?" So it was absolutely incredible. So there was such a fever about the city around that game. So that was definitely one that left me elated. There haven't been too many of those, to be honest, because success is so few and far between. But, one man's success doesn't necessarily translate to what another one perceives as success. It's all about working within the parameters. I take as much joy in a 1-0 win over Leganés as I do from, Spain winning the World Cup. That's how important each Real Valladolid match is to me. So I think the game that would leave me dejected was when the team got relegated from La Liga in 2014. They had been promoted in 2012 and had done okay, I guess is the best way of saying it, that season. But the following season, it was, just a bit of a disaster. And it culminated with them being relegated on the last day of the season at home in front of their own fans. And for me, that can be the difference between employees of the club having a job and not having a job. It can mean the difference between the team coming straight back up and fighting for promotion the next year, or it could be an infinite number of years spent scrapping against relegation again. So with a lot of teams, you can almost be guaranteed that they're going to be coming back up after relegation, pretty soon. But with Real Valladolid and a strong second division, you just can't guarantee it. So I remember we actually had quite a nice family day out. Living so close to Loch Ness, we had taken a cruise boat along what's called the Caledonian Canal, which leads all the way to the mouth of Loch Ness, and it opens up and you can just see so much in front of you, and it's beautiful. It's like something from a postcard. So we'd gone on a family day out to that, but I'd kind of been checking my watch as well, because I knew that this game was on later, and I'm trying not to be too nervous about it and trying to enjoy the day. So I got back and watched that game, and unfortunately they didn't get the result that they needed, and they dropped down. And it's the classic shots on TV of the players, their faces in their hands or dropping down onto the floor. But also, one thing that really stuck with me was that, you see shots of fans in the stands and they look pretty distraught. But one that will really stick with me was there was just one guy and everybody else around him had gone home, and the stadium floor around him was just a mess of newspapers, of people taking in newspapers or the sports pages from the newspaper and reading them about the game, and they'd obviously just been dropped and left, and they were blowing about in the wind, and this guy was just sitting looking so utterly dejected. And that's something that will really stick in my mind, because that's how much this club means to people. They're not up there challenging for the league title. They're not in Europe. They're not going on this miraculous cup run where, they're going to end up being in the Copa del Rey final or something like that. But people genuinely have this club in their hearts. It means a lot to them. It's been passed down through their families to, onto them to becoming a fan. And yeah, just to see that guy looking thoroughly dejected, it just mirrored how I felt. And it reaffirmed to me that distance doesn't come into it when you support a team. It's about how you feel about them. And you've had people on your podcast who have supported teams in England from very, very far afield. You've also, I was listening with interest to the gentleman from London who supports San Lorenzo. And if I think that my team is far away, that is nothing in comparison to his. And listening to him speaking about the passion that he has for them and the passion that the other fans share. And he spoke about community, he spoke about family, he spoke about a sense of belonging. And that could have been me speaking, because I feel all those things for my team. I feel so fortunate that I found them, or that they found me. There was kind of a bit of both, I guess. But it's something that you can't, you can't teach. You can say you like a team, but until the small wins mean that much to you and the losses are that painful, then you just can't compare it. You hear Barcelona sacking their manager when they're in first place in the league because they're not playing well enough. I find things like that incredible. And obviously they're holding themselves accountable to different standards. But when you hear about them being in crisis because they didn't get very far in the Champions League, or they finished second in the league, I would cut my arm off for my team to finish second in the league. See how great it was when I was talking about them finishing seventh, in 2008, or finishing fourth in 62, 63. These things don't really happen to our club. And I would argue that the fans who are really passionate about teams that don't have success just value their team so much more than the big teams who base themselves on a perceived lack of success. And I think that's quite indicative of the modern world, is that we don't take long enough to sit there and appreciate what we have around us. A lot of us think more about, I want this, or I don't have that, or, I don't have the latest whatever gadget it is. But deep down, we're all very lucky that we're here, that we have people around us who care. And maybe this has been overly deep and philosophical, and maybe some people would say it's just football, it's just a game. But I'm really glad to have found your podcast, because I've just been hearing so many similar feelings coming through when people talk about their clubs. Now, I don't support San Lorenzo, I don't support Manchester United, I don't support Arsenal like you do, but I know that we have this common thread between all of us, and there's masses of people around the world who will maybe not be in the stadium for their team's games week in, week out, but that doesn't stop them being massive fans of them. And I just think in this digital age where we're all brought together that little bit closer, and you can watch your team on the internet, or you can listen to them on the radio, or you can go on their website. People maybe didn't have that 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, but we are so lucky to be able to indulge ourselves in these passions, because before YouTube started broadcasting all the Segunda divisions live, free, I was scrabbling about trying to find really any stream that I could watch it on. When I'm watching these really pixelated shapes moving about the screen with maybe an advert for like a betting website plastered across the middle of the screen, so you actually couldn't see a lot of what was going on. But I was listening, and I was taking it in and just really feeling like I was part of something. And I guess it's human nature that you want to identify with something. You want to be part of a larger picture. And this team gave me the opportunity to do that. And I feel really driven to take what they've given me and extend that out to other people, and to welcome people in and say, if you want to be a part of this family, you'd be very welcome as well.
Brilliant. I think you put it really well. At a time where a lot divides us in many ways, football is something that can bring us together as well. As sappy and as cliche as it sounds, but it's a simple game, but it's very deep, I'd like to think. There's lots of emotions that you go through in a game, out of the game, and when you're following something as passionately as we are, we invest a lot more than just time.
Yeah.
And I think what you said was so brilliant. It's going to make for a great trailer. I'm going to tell you that.
That's excellent. Yeah, I mean, I'm just considering the number of people that you've spoken to in your series so far, and there's such a wealth of teams. There's teams in there that you wouldn't necessarily expect. There's teams in there that you think, yeah, I can understand, people are really attracted to them, and that's, and that's great. And everybody has such a unique story. But, you take Leeds, for example, and, we spoke about loyalty and that kind of thing. And I was in school with somebody whose father is from Leeds. So they grew up as Leeds fans. And, we're in 2020 now. This time 20 years ago, I was on holiday in America, and I remember sitting in my great auntie's living room watching the Champions League on TV, and it was Leeds against Barcelona at the Camp Nou.
Yeah.
And then you think about what happened to Leeds after that. They went on this incredible slide where it just looked like they were never going to recover from it. So although I've got no, I'm not like a Leeds fan, but I can understand what it must mean to them as a club, but also as a city, to get back into the big time. And I think it's great, and I wish them every success. And I can understand why people are captivated, because they've got such a storied history, which it's almost like they just dropped off the edge of the table. They had got all the way to the Champions League, and they've had Premier League title under their belt and everything like that. Really famous names: Eric Cantona, Thomas Brolin, household world football names. To go from that to struggling, and people have genuinely stuck by them. I saw this brilliant picture on Twitter, and it got shared really widely, of a family. So it was a father with his daughter and his son, and after they got relegated, they took a picture of themselves, and they were holding a sign saying, "Leeds, we will be back." And then underneath it was them present day, as they are now. Holding a sign saying "We are back," and I think that's great. So I've got a lot of time for a club like that.
Yeah, me too. I'm very eager to see how they do. Very eager to see how Bielsa, if he can stick around, and just see how they do. You mentioned earlier about family. You said your dad is a Real Madrid fan.
Mm-hmm.
How does he view your obsession with Real Valladolid?
Well, in a way, he's actually he's actually quite pleased with it because it meant that I stopped chasing Barcelona around Europe. So he kind of supports it in that way. I think he finds it a bit obscure as well, because if I get really excited and I try and tell him about, oh, Dad, we beat Girona 1-0, and he's like, "Oh, right, have they ever won the European Cup?" And I'm like, "Well, no," but I was like, "Oh, well, my team has, 13 times." And I was like, "Well, good for you." But I think because his passion about Real Madrid comes from his own unique story about going to see them when he was a young boy, and I try and put myself in the position where you take away the internet, you take away satellite television, and you take away all the things that we have for our convenience now, that we can just sit and watch just about any league in the world anytime that we want. We don't even have to watch it live. We can record it, or we can catch up on it, and there's highlight shows and there's websites everywhere, and you've got podcasts now as well that are bringing people information. Back then, they basically just had the newspapers, they had limited television, and they had word of mouth. And the word on the street, as it was at that time, was that the best team in the world was coming to town, and he just thought, I can't miss an opportunity like this. See, he actually snuck in with his friends, so they didn't even pay to see what's widely considered as the greatest game of football ever played when they beat Eintracht Frankfurt 8-3. And unless you're Bayern Munich and Barcelona, you don't see 10 goals in a European competition, these days very much at all. So for him, that was a unique way of just going to see what was the greatest show in town at that time, and he's just held on to that. And furthermore, I've discussed that my dad's profoundly deaf, so he went deaf when he was in his 20s. So he hasn't heard for a very long time now. But one of the things that he consistently says that he can remember is the noise of over 120,000 people all crammed into Hampden Park Stadium in Glasgow to just watch this spectacle unfold. And you and I just wouldn't know what that sounds like now, and he's kind of got that frozen in his head. So it just makes it all the more special for him that he can go back and he can remember it in such a unique way. So everybody's story about their team are just different, and I feel very lucky to have a unique story about mine, and I know that he does about his, and you do about yours, and so on and so forth. And it just all adds to that richness of the story of football around the world and how accessible it is for people, and it's just a joy to share. I mean, you spoke about it being about things dividing us, but equally football will unite people in a way that very few other things on earth can. So it's like that two-edged sword that it can have a power of good and a power of bad. And, I just prefer to focus on all the positive things that it can bring us. And there are a huge number of those. So my dad and I had long spoken about having a boys' holiday where we'd jet off to Madrid and we'd go and sample the finest football that Spain has to offer. Now, I spoke about going to see the Barcelona-Real Madrid match before. Now, he and I went together for that, but that was 1999, and we're a long way removed from that. And we'd always spoken about, wouldn't it be great to have a return fixture, or just for him to be able to go and see Real Madrid in their home stadium and do the museum tour. Now, my dad's a lot older now. I think we're both accepting that's never going to happen. But one of what is arguably the best moments in my life was when I was on my way back from Valladolid to Madrid, before I flew back to Edinburgh with my brand new suitcase that people had handed me in Valladolid. I was trailing that behind me, and I was quite short on time, and I was quite short on budget, and I thought I would love to just go and see Real Madrid Stadium from the outside, because no matter what you feel about another team, some things in world football you just have to see. And I would have just loved to have been able to tick that off the list. Don't get me wrong, I'd like to go and see a game there, but just to be outside, I think was, I was thinking this would be fantastic. And when am I, just a guy from the Highlands of Scotland, going to have too many more chances where I could just go, should I go and see the Santiago Bernabeu stadium today? So I thought, you know what, let's just do it. And then using the wonders of technology, I had planned to FaceTime my mum and dad at home. So I sent a sneaky little text message to my mum just to say, is Dad going to be around in the next little while? And she said, yes. I said, well, okay, make sure you're together because I'd like to FaceTime you. So the best thing about FaceTime or, any other kind of video call is that I can speak to my dad directly because he lip reads. So, the clarity of these things is such that he can pick me up easily now. So I made my way to Real Madrid Stadium, and I was a bit short on cash, and I was kind of watching the taxi meter going up a bit, and I happened to notice that the taxi driver was playing a Travis CD. Now that might be a bit of an obscure reference for some people listening to your podcast, but Travis are a Scottish band who kind of moderately successful. And I just thought that was quite a strange thing for this guy in a Madrid taxi to be listening to. So I struck up a conversation and said that I was from Scotland, the same place as them. So he got really chatty, and he cut me a bit of a deal that I got a little bit of money off the taxi fare, and he dropped me right off at the door at the Santiago Bernabeu Stadium. So I called my parents on FaceTime, and they were both together on the screen, and they were like, "Oh, hi son, how are you? How are you getting on?" So I was holding the phone up, and I had the stadium in front of me so that they couldn't see it. And I said to my dad, I'm doing good, but I'm on my way home. I'm in Madrid at the moment. I'm a little bit lost. So I'm kind of looking for some sort of landmark to clue me in as to where I might be. And as I did that, I turned around so that they could see the stadium over my shoulder. And my dad's face at that point is something that I will never forget as long as I live. His expression was like this mixture of like shock and like love in his eyes, and he was stammering, and he says, that's not what I think it is it? And I was like, it sure is. So I got a little bit closer and I showed him the badge, the Real Madrid badge above the doors at the front of the stadium and everything like that. And he was absolutely delighted. He was really, really emotional, and he was just so pleased. And he was like, "Oh son, that's just magic," So I'm really glad that I did that, because we're not going to get the opportunity to swan off together, just the way that life goes. So that was a really special moment, and that's something that I'll carry with me. And we spoke about the last time we talked about how I keep the train ticket from my journey from Chamartin station in Madrid out to the airport. I keep that with me quite a lot, actually, because it just reminds me of my dad's face and just how much joy a fairly simple little gesture like that can bring to somebody. And it just showed how much that club means to him, and how much he just, he was just in awe of seeing it. And that was such a special thing to be able to do. So definitely a long-lasting memory for me.
Last time when we spoke, you also talked about your son and his passion. He also is a FarAway fan in a way.
I guess he is. Yeah, I'd never thought about it like that, actually. But my 7-year-old son Cameron, who's heading towards being 8 in October, he is, unfortunately for you, a massive Tottenham Hotspur fan. And if anybody thinks that I'm passionate about football, they should just spend 5 minutes in his company, because I don't even come close to how passionate he is. So when he was 5, he woke up one morning, and he had a passing interest in football, before. But he woke up one morning when he was 5 and said, "Dad, did you know I'm a Tottenham Hotspur fan?" And I thought, "Oh right, okay, very good, very good. That's nice." And anyone who's ever met him knows that when he gets interested in a subject, he gets interested to the point where he could produce a thesis on it. He reads everything that there is to read. He watches every YouTube video. So whatever he's into at the time, and there has been a multitude of different interests, but the one that's really, really powerful for him is Tottenham Hotspur. Now, we have no connection with Tottenham Hotspur as a family at all. No one in my family is a fan or has been a fan. No one in my wife's family is a Tottenham fan or has ever been a Tottenham fan as far as we're aware. But somehow he's got all of us every weekend checking to see what the Tottenham Hotspur score is. My wife's family support a different football team, but the one thing that really unites us all when we're with him is that we've all just become these kind of surrogate Tottenham Hotspur fans. And again, it's just like the power of football. This is something that he has decided that he's just going to throw himself headlong into. So it's every aspect of the game. It's the stadiums, the buses, the players' boots, the stuff that they wear to warm up on the field, history of a team, squad numbers, you name it. He is really into it. And I like to think that whatever I've accomplished in the field of covering football is just going to be eclipsed by him, because he's already showing an interest in presenting things. He's very good with his pronunciation of players' names of different languages, different countries. Son is his favourite Spurs player, and Harry Kane. So he claims that he wants to be English because Harry Kane's English, and as a Scottish person, that's not something you hear very very often. But we're like, hey, this is absolutely fine. We'll totally support it. So he claims to be a big fan of the England team as well. He likes watching their games. He just loves the sport. He loves sport in general. But football is a massive passion for him, and I can't help but be passionate about it as well. I got disappointed when Spurs got knocked out of the Champions League, because I knew that he'd be disappointed in it. And if you told me that 10 years ago that I'd be keeping an eye on the Spurs scores, I'd be like, well, why? But then I suppose if you told me 10 years ago that I'd be, massively involved in a fairly low level Spanish football team, I would have told you you're crazy as well. But life's got a funny way of throwing these things at us, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? And I love that. That's 3 generations of FarAway fans
in the same family. Yeah, it is. Yeah. No, I hadn't considered it that way, but that's a really valid point. And maybe when you get into, I don't know, season 12 of the FarAwayFan podcast, then you'll be able to have an interview with him. But he's very keen to kind of help me with the podcast that I'm trying to launch, and he's very articulate. He's come up with some great ideas. He's told me a little bit about video editing and whose videos I should be looking at to try and base them on. And he's got these really great ideas about football on TV and about adverts for it. So yeah, it's definitely something that educationally I think can be applied to a lot of different situations, because he's looking at maths to do with average goals and the difference. If somebody wins by 5-3, how many goals difference is that, and that kind of thing. So he gets these things worked out. He loves drawing, so he draws kits and he draws badges and stadiums and all sorts of different things. And so, and he's already showing an interest in learning Spanish. He's got quite a few phrases already, and he'll ask to record a video on WhatsApp and send it to Spanish friends of mine to tell them what he's up to, So I found myself standing with my trouser legs rolled up in Loch Ness, filming him in the water, splashing about, because he wants to tell people in Spanish that we're at Loch Ness and he's the Loch Ness monster. It's wonderful. So so many cool things just to share in. So as a parent, that's pretty awesome, I think.
My name is Cameron. I'm from Inverness. I'm a fan of Tottenham Hotspur.
Most people, when I talk to them about mementos, they talk to me about kits, talk to me about scarves. So far, you have the largest memento mentioned on this podcast. I want you to tell us about the shed.
Oh, the shed, yes. Well, if I if I turn my head to the side, I can see the shed from here. So yeah, we've got a very small garden at the back of our house, and we have a shed in it. Now, some people might not be sort of too up on what the Real Valladolid colours are, but anyone who's listened to your podcast, the logo that you have, the cover art for your podcast, is pretty much the same colour as a Real Valladolid kit. The sort of the light purple and white, and that's a really unique colour. I mean, you've got teams like Fiorentina who wear it, but there's very few that have that shade of violet. And it's a bit of a contentious issue at the moment because Adidas, who have the contract to do our kits, really kind of missed the colour by a long way, with the last kit. And there were high hopes for this season to be a bit better, but they've introduced a stripes with a fade that start off really quite dark purple, but work their way up towards the shoulder. That's a bit more like the traditional club colours. But as any super fan of a club will do, they do these odd little things. And when our shed was bought, I noticed that the door was the panels of the door went up and down, and I thought that's like the stripes on a football shirt. I thought, I wonder if I painted it violet and white on the door. And then I thought, I wonder if I just painted the whole shed violet and white. So yeah, I think what I'll do probably on my Twitter page, just quite recently, there's a photo that I took of not just my violet and white shed with the Real Valladolid logo above the door. There's also featuring my matching bath towels that I had hang out on the washing line with the violet and white stripes on it as well. So yeah, I think this is the kind of thing that pushes you from fan to super fan to obsessive kind of territory. So I think when you start painting sheds in your team's colours, then yeah, you've got it bad. It's quite a serious condition by that point. But I do have another memento with me, which I will take a photo of for later on. But another memento I have is the shirt that I was given when I went to the match against Osasuna, my first ever match, and the club really kindly gifted me a shirt from that season signed by the entire squad. So this is something that I'm in the process of creating a frame for, because I'd like to display it in the house, and I may have to run that past my wife first. But I'm planning a frame that has the shirt, but it also has photos of some of the people that I met on that trip as well, because for me it was more than football. It was about the friendship and meeting people and forging these relationships that we'll just carry with us. So yeah, I'm working on a frame at the moment, which will hopefully have a lighting up element to it as well. But I'm notorious for starting jobs but not finishing them and leaving things half done. So I shall add that to the list of things I should probably do more of.
You also told me when you first started interacting with the fans, they started sending things to the house.
Yeah, they did. That was the level of sort of excitement that they had about somebody taking interest in them from far away. And when I began communicating with people on the fan forums, one of them said, "Well, if you send me your address, I'll send something over to you." And we'd had a discussion and about where I lived and all the rest of it, but I hadn't got to the point where I'd sort of given anyone my address. And I thought, well, do you know what? If the guy's a serial killer and he's willing to travel all this way, then well done to him. He's shown some commitment, and maybe there's a podcast in there somewhere about faraway serial killer or something. But he very kindly sent. Well, the first thing that he sent over was actually a toy. It's Elmo from Sesame Street wearing the Real Valladolid kit, and he sent that over for my older child, who was quite a bit younger at the time, if we're talking 10 years ago. So yeah, so he must have been about 2 at the time, and he was just so pleased to receive this toy, and that was indicative of what the people were like. So pretty soon, stickers started arriving, t-shirts, there were scarves, there were posters, pictures, leaflets, key rings, you name it, and it's just gone on from there, and people have been so generous. It's the largest collection of
Lovely, man.
the kindest people that I've ever met in my life, and it's just incredible how it's come about, and that's continued up to this day. And the gentleman who sent me the Elmo doll, he has developed into basically being my best friend, and we talk almost every single day, and I consider him very much being part of my family, and he considers me to be part of his family, and it's just great to share these experiences of him having children and me having children, and just comparing notes about growing up and what school's like in Spain, what school's like in Scotland, and this whole thing just stems from this one match that happened to go along and see 10 years ago. So it's mind-boggling. It really is just how it's developed into something so entrenched in that this just part of this community, of this group, of this family, and every day I think about it, and I just think how lucky I am that I've met these people, and that I have this chap Carlos in my life, and he's he helps me with my Spanish, which is kind of improving as we go along, but he offers help in that department, and his son's learning English, so sometimes I'll get this text about how do you say this word in English, and he'll send me a picture and I'll tell him what the word is for it, and it's just wonderful. There's just connections all over the place, and I'm just so grateful that it's happened. It sounds a cliche, but it is so much more than football. It's about sharing lives together, and sharing experiences, and sharing the good times and the bad times, and the football is just, football's a part of that. It's not all there is now, and I just couldn't have imagined sitting there watching that game 10 years ago that it was going to develop into this, and it just kind of shows you that anything in life is possible. You don't know what's around the corner, and there's so many opportunities to enjoy, and if people can just share these experiences with others, then there's more chance of that person getting an experience of their own, which they'll pass on to somebody, and so on and so forth. And I think probably my friends and my work colleagues are just, they'll probably roll their eyes when I just start talking about Real Valladolid again, but I have people at work who come up to me and they say to me, so how's Carlos? Like he's just like he's one of the guys. It's incredible. I tell people just how kind he's been, and just his adventures and my adventures, and people just think it's really cool, and it's just so fun to be a part of it.
These clubs give a lot to us, and we give a lot to them. You're doing something a little special in terms of giving back.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that, obviously there's been massive things going on around the world this year, and I think that's probably going to delay what I'm planning on doing, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it will give more time to plan and to make sure that this is done the right way. But because everybody has been so kind to me, and I want to sort of show kindness back to them in some shape or form. I've got a background in working with children and education, and I know how important schooling is to children, but I also know how important just sharing experiences with members of their family can be, and I'm really acutely aware of how football can be a vehicle for that to happen. So when you've got a club like Real Valladolid that are really part of the fabric of the city, it presents a unique opportunity to be able to combine a few of those things. So what I would like to do, because I can't be there every week, I would like somebody to be there every week on my behalf, somebody who might not otherwise get the opportunity to attend the football, because football can be expensive. La Liga's by far not the most expensive league in the world, but everybody has different things going on in their lives. Everybody has different upbringings, and not everybody has access to the same opportunities. So what I'm proposing in the near future, hopefully, is to work with the club to be able to purchase a season ticket for a child, but also a season ticket for an adult as well. And I'm going to gift the season tickets to a school in Valladolid. And I would like there to be some sort of recognition scheme whereby if a child has worked particularly well to overcome an educational hurdle, maybe there's, for example, they find maths really difficult and it looks like they're very just close to just giving up on maths and saying, I can't do this. But then something happens through that hard work and it finally clicks, that thing just works. But also if somebody has done something nice for a friend, it could be helping them when they fall over, or it could be showing kindness, sharing food, sharing a jacket if it's raining, or if somebody doesn't have somebody to play with at school, going over and saying, hey, do you want to come and play with us? I would love to be able to have that child nominated to be the person who wins a ticket for an upcoming Real Valladolid match, but also to take somebody with them, to take an adult, an auntie or an uncle or a mum or dad, or even a grandma or a grandpa, or just somebody to share that time together, going along and supporting the team that they otherwise might not be able to go and see. And, maybe they don't get to see a member of their family very often, but this could be a situation where you could create an opportunity for two people to come together, with one of them having done something, kind or hardworking, and then just going and enjoying an afternoon at the football and taking it all in, because it's a fantastic place to go to watch football. The stadium on the inside is really nice. It's a beautiful, beautiful place to go and watch a beautiful game. And, how about just making it that little bit special by getting somebody who might not be able to get there, into a seat, and, that person can support them on my behalf. So although I'm a FarAwayFan, I could have somebody there because of me. And I just think that that would be really cool to be able to do that. And I've been in touch with the club already, and I've been in touch with a very helpful gentleman called David Espinar, who works very closely with Ronaldo. And he's agreed that this is something that we can look into facilitating, and when the time is right, we'll get some time together and we'll discuss it, and we'll hopefully push that forward. And when fans are allowed back in the stadium, maybe somebody will get to go and see the team for the first time because of this initiative. So I think that would be really nice to be able to do that and just give back.
I think that's a brilliant idea. I think it's such a simple but brilliant idea, and I really wish you the very best for that.
That's really kind of you, Sean.
It's so important, and as somebody who is a FarAwayFan, to do this for somebody who's local, it's I can't find the words and enough of the words to praise you for the brilliance of this idea and just how noble it is, and it's just a sweet gesture. Then I think will go a long way in helping somebody just get to the ground and experience something that they usually wouldn't have the opportunity to.
Thank you very much. That's really kind of you to say so. I mean, I know how much the experience of going there meant to me, and now I'm almost 40. So, if you could just imagine how overwhelming that experience would be for a child, to go there for the first time. I just think everybody should get the chance to go to the football. Nobody should be priced out of it, but if they are, there's always a way of making things work. Nothing is impossible. I like I say, I wouldn't have believed that I would have been able to be in this position to be a part of this, and I just think that their kindness has been stretched out towards me over here. So these guys have been kind of FarAwayFans for me. So if I get the opportunity to do something in return, it's my way of saying thank you to them and helping somebody out.
It's brilliant. And how are you going about this? You said a GoFundMe page?
Yeah, the details of it are still in the planning stage, because there's far more to consider than I had initially thought. So what I would like to do is to hopefully get a GoFundMe page set up or something similar, that if people wanted to, that they could contribute to that. I'd like to do some fundraising myself, so I'm going to come up with some ideas as to how I can raise funds on Scottish soil by doing something here. And I've already spoken to a couple of businesses in my local area, and some of them have connections with Spain already, who are quite interested in helping out. So it would not just be myself that would be facilitating the season ticket. It could be any number of people. So if people wanted to contribute a British pound, or if they wanted to contribute €1 and say that they were part of it, who knows, we might even be able to afford one of the really good seats that or a private box or something. There's the possibility that it wouldn't just be a kind of a regular seat, but it just if I put it in the hands of other people and say, look, this is your chance to jump on board, and the more of us who work together, the more we could do for somebody, then I'm pretty confident that people would jump on that train and help out. So when the details are finalized, I'll certainly publicize it as widely as I can and let you know.
You've been a fan, you said 10 years now. So what has it meant to you, this journey?
If I could sum it up in one word, it would be everything. That one word would be everything. We could talk for another 5 hours about what it means to me. But I'll try and keep it short, and I'll try and not get emotional about it. But it just means having the chance to represent a group of people in my day-to-day life, be it by wearing their shirt to somewhere, or sending out a tweet on Twitter, or putting out a picture on Instagram, or just telling somebody who's got an interest in football about them, who this club are, who the fans are, what they're like, how kind they are. They often get overlooked in terms of the bigger clubs, and their proximity to Real Madrid means that many people in the city choose to be Real Madrid fans, but the fans that choose to get behind Real Valladolid are so passionate and they're so enthusiastic, and the club means so much to them. I think when you become a fan of a club, you then have a responsibility to carry that passion through as well, that you just can't take it lightly. You can't be there for the good times and not the bad times. If this team went down to playing part-time football in a regional league in Spain, I would still follow them. And I know that the vast majority of fans would as well. And because those fans have welcomed me and called me one of their own, I have a responsibility to uphold that loyalty. And I'm more than prepared to do that. I would, I'm not the furthest away fan, but the love I have for this club literally just makes smiles melt away. They make me feel like I'm as part of it as somebody who has a season ticket and sits there every weekend. And I just wish that the world was more aware of how beautiful the city of Valladolid is, how noble the club is, and just what a great set of supporters and how much kindness they've shown me. And I just want to share that as widely as I can. So this club, if they lose 5-0, if they win 1-0, to me, every day is special. And again, it sounds like a cliche, but It's just so much more than the 11 men on the field. It's about the people in the stands. It's about, so and so's grandfather who used to go and watch the team but can't anymore, but got to see great teams in the 60s and 70s and 80s and what have you. It's just it's an unbelievably humbling experience to be a part of this family, and fans that follow bigger teams, or they might be missing out on this, and I wish more people got the chance to experience what I've experienced, because the last 10 years have been just nothing short of phenomenal, and I think the next 10 years are going to be even better, and that's setting the bar quite high, because I'm going to do everything that I can to put this club on the map so that more people know about them, and more people, are aware of the name and just the great work that they do. And, if we win some games along the way while we're doing that, that's a bonus. But for me, it's all about the people.
And I'm sure that they're going to do well, especially with a fan like you, such a brilliant ambassador for the club, really. Passion which you've shown, and the way that you discuss the club and all that they've done for you and what you're doing for the club, I really admire it, Marti.
Thank you. That's really kind of you, Sean. And thank you so much, because I think you're doing great work and just giving people like me the opportunity to tell my story, and you've given lots of other people that opportunity too. And now I'm aware of people, and I'm aware of little intricacies and nuances about clubs that I was never aware of before. So as far as I'm concerned, your podcast is the first that I've come across that's doing this. And I think it takes a very special person to be able to say, I want other people to tell their stories. So, I'm sitting here telling mine and telling about the people of Valladolid, but it's just a drop in the ocean compared to what you're taking the time to do to allow people to share their passions. And I think, I think you should be commended for that as well. I think you're giving people a really unique chance to share what's important to them. And I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to other people's stories, because I know how much it means to them. Yeah. And for you to sit there and just spend so much time enabling that to happen is just, it's out of this world. And I feel really genuinely quite honoured to have been approached to be asked to be a part of this. And, I can't thank you enough for that.
Oh, you're being far too kind. I feel it's a privilege of mine to be able to listen to people, and it's such a joy listening to people talking about things that they're passionate about. It's such a joy listening to all these stories. I feel I'm privileged to be a part of this, and just share in their experiences and learning about clubs, all these clubs. I'm getting a FarAwayFan's perspective on all these clubs, and they're not small clubs. I like to say they're niche clubs. The more I learn about these clubs, it's a real privilege.
And it's just been so interesting to hear so many common threads running through everybody's stories. They're so unique but so similar in so many ways. And just from a humanistic standpoint, it's just so interesting that people can experience different things in so many different ways, but there to be common lines running through that, and I think it's about welcoming, and I've experienced a great welcome, and I know that some of your other guests have as well, and I think that's a pretty special thing when the world is the world's divided in so many ways, and it's so much easier to knock somebody down than to pick them up, and it just shows that there's people all around the world willing to work to bring people up and further them, and that's exactly what you're doing with this podcast. The easy thing would be to just do what I'm doing and pick a team and bang on about them, but you're picking people as your subject matter and spending a lot of your time to give them the chance to share their joy and their passion. So it's awesome. It really is.
Thank you, and I just want to thank you again, Marti, for coming on FarAwayFan. The site looks great. The new logo looks brilliant. I eagerly await your podcast, and I hope that we can chat again.
Absolutely, soon. I would love to. And the podcast is inching its way ever closer, and my my 2019 season preview has had to become my season 2020 preview. But you know, hey, there's bumps in the road as we go along, and it's fun, and certainly, you know, I'll publicise it widely when it comes together, and we'll it'd be great to work together on some stuff in the future.
Thanks again, Marty, for coming on. It was a joy and a privilege to hear you speak about Real
Thank you, Sean.
Valladolid.
Thanks so much for your time, and thank you for asking me to be part of it.
Sadly, a few days after recording this heartfelt episode with us, Marty's dad passed away. Our deepest sympathies and condolences to Marty and his family.